18-1. They said humans were myths. Ghost stories whispered across star lanes. Cautionary tales told to young cadets of a species that burned itself to ash. 7 centuries of silence. No planets. No colonies. No signals. Nothing. Until the unthinkable happened. An Accord fleet entered an uncharted system on the fringe, and never came back. Black box data surfaced for just 3 seconds before corruption. 3 seconds of chaos, static, and a voice. Cold and unmistakably human. We remember. Now the galaxy trembles, because if the myths are real, the monsters they made of humanity might be too. The cold void of deep space stretched infinitely outward from listening post Epsilon 13, a forgotten station orbiting a dead rock in the Lesser Pilasara frame. Its crew of 6 had not reported anything interesting in over 40 standard cycles. The Alliance had placed them there for show, a gesture of thoroughness along the outer reaches. It was a station where dreams died and careers stalled. Lieutenant Niran Vael, a communications analyst from the Dervanti species, leaned back in his chair, his blue-tinted compound eyes scanning the incoming subspace chatter, mostly static, some pirate chatter. One poorly coded smuggling manifest, rerouted, tagged, logged. Boring. Then he heard it, a low-frequency pulse, steady, almost deliberate. Unlike anything else on the board. Niran sat up. He tapped into the signal and ran a preliminary decryption through the Accord's linguistic AI. Expects garble, indecipherable nonsense, or static. Instead, the AI began translating. Echo, request, response. His breath caught. Supervisor Terrell, he said, calling across the comm. I have something. I think it's a language. Terrell, a leathery-skinned Vorkari officer, approached. Another pirate loop. No, sir. This is structure. It's formatted with redundancy layering like military-grade transmissions. Antique, but efficient. Terrell frowned. Origin. Niran pinged the relay. Quadrant 77 Aleph. Near the Caradon debris field. No known settlements. Just ruins. Let me guess, Terrell said grimly. Terran. Ruins. Silence hung in the air. Niran's mandibles clicked. It matches old Terran. Pre-fall structure. That was impossible. Humanity had fallen over 700 years ago, during the final flame self-extinction by nuclear and biochemical warfare. Accord historians had catalogued the disaster through fragmented sensor records and scattered ruins. Earth was reduced to cinders. The species extinct. But the signal continued. Now it wasn't just a ping. It was a transmission. Fleet Admiral Sarin of the 5th Strategic Armada stood aboard the command carrier Radiant Mantle, its obsidian hull absorbing the faint starlight of the fringe. He studied the decoded signal on the holo display. Confirm this again, he ordered. Fleet Technician Yarix, a feathered Kralite, tapped nervously at the control pad. Verified 3 times, Admiral. The signal uses old Terran syntax, but it's evolving. The last packet included modern Accord signal layers, learned within minutes of exposure. Impossible, Sarin muttered. They would need adaptive AI to accomplish that. A silence fell over the bridge. Sarin turned to his first officer. Deploy Vanguard Wing. Full tactical loadout. I want visual confirmation. But Sir, Yarix interjected. This could be a trap. An ambush by rebels or remnants. If this is truly human, Sarin said, then it's not just a myth returning. It's a strategic variable we never planned for. Proceed. 3 warships entered the 77 Aleph system. The mission was simple. Sweep, verify, no engagement, no assumptions. The system was unremarkable. 1 orange dwarf star, 5 dead planets, scattered debris clouds. 1 frozen moon bore ruins. Ancient, possibly Terran. They approached it cautiously, then everything went wrong. Lieutenant Sharix aboard the Herald's Gaze noticed it first. The stars moved. At least that's what it looked like. Captain, I've got motion in the debris field. Wait, entire formations. Decloaking signatures. Before the captain could respond, the HUD blinked out. The artificial gravity fluctuated. A ship-wide EMP, but no known tech could reach them at this distance, and this precision. Then came the voice. Unidentified Accord fleet. You have entered sovereign Terran territory. Retreat immediately or be neutralized. The voice was cold, neutral, human. A second later, rail slugs struck the Herald's gaze midsection, tearing through shielding and hull like paper. No energy weapons, pure kinetic. The other two ships activated full defensive arrays, but nothing responded. Their systems were blind, jamming, full spectrum disruption. Something had turned the entire quadrant into a coffin. They never even saw what hit them next. A spike in space, a fold, then, black. 36 hours later, the Accord received one final ping from the Herald's gaze's emergency black box. 3 seconds of garbled footage, flashes of impact, screams, hull breaches. Then we remember. Admiral Sarin stood in front of the High Council. We have confirmation. Humanity is not extinct. They have returned strategically advanced, militarily prepared, and tactically ruthless. The room buzzed with disbelief. Sarin raised a hand. We do not know their numbers. We do not know their allies. But we do know this. He pointed at the footage now playing on the hollow screen. A brief moment before the destruction. A sleek, dreadnought-shaped ship, matte black with no identifiers, emerging from what appeared to be folded space-time. Human tech, centuries beyond anything predict. A silence deeper than vacuum. Counselor Alrek, a moss-skinned Talari, growled. We believed they killed themselves. They did not, Sarin replied. They hid, they adapted, and now they are prepared for war. Back on listening post Epsilon 13, Niran stared at the transmission log. The signal was back. Now it was broadcasting coordinates, but not for rendezvous. For burial sites. A list of Accord worlds, planets where humans were bombed, purged or betrayed over the last millennium. The message was simple. These are the debts we will collect. The Celestial Vow, flagship of Accord's 7th battle cluster, surged into the 77 Aleph system, with an elegance only the Vorn-class supercarriers could maintain. The ship spanned 18 kilometers, a behemoth of ion drives, automated hangars and plasma lances capable of cutting moons in half. Vice Admiral Relin paced the bridge with restrained urgency. He was of the Krellin race, tall, bipedal armored carapace, along his spine, and black pupilless eyes that flicked constantly toward movement. Not because he was nervous, because he was prey once, centuries ago, and today his instincts screamed. Status of local scans, he barked. Still blanketing interference. Vice Admiral, said Deck Officer Vida, high bandwidth jamming across quantum gravitic, and even thermal spectrums. We're blind, sir. Impossible, Relin murmured. You're saying someone is jamming thermal detection. That's like hiding in fire using mirrors. It's working, she replied quietly. Relin straightened. Deploy recon drones. Full shell. Establish a 3-tier formation with the support fleet. If there's something down there, he never finished. The screen lit up with thousands of yellow-red pings, motion signals, dozens of objects emerging from the debris field orbiting the second moon. And they weren't debris. From a tactical view, the moon appeared abandoned, an old Terran colony, possibly one of the arc worlds mentioned in deep myth. Scars from ancient orbital bombardment marred its surface, and its crust was split by a planetary fracture. To the Accord fleet, it looked like a lifeless husk, until it moved. The debris field around the moon shifted, not drifted, rotated, synchronized as though pulled by gravity. Except there was no gravitational anomaly. There were thousands of shards, each one with internal thruster nodes, not junk, satellites, weapons. They aligned in silence, hundreds at a time into a geometric spiral orbit that shimmered under minimal light. Then a pulse, a faint blue glow spread across the array like lightning along a metal nerve. Tracking radar signatures, scrambling, shouted Vida. They've locked us by triangulation. They don't need sensors. Raise shields, Relin roared. It was too late. The Iron Moon spoke with silence. No heat blooms, no energy bursts, just motion. Kinetic warheads, hundreds of them fired from magnetic rails buried within the moon's crust. They moved at Mach 12, wrapped in shielding that mimicked asteroid fragments. The first strike hit the destroyer Valiant Sky, tearing through 6 layers of armor and core, rupturing its fusion chamber. The second barrage hit the Dovestride, cleaving it into 3 fragments. They didn't fight like any galactic navy. They didn't broadcast. No demands. No threats, just action. Guerrilla warfare on a planetary scale. Relon ordered the fleet into emergency dispersal. Fighters launched 6,000 drones and manned interceptors, forming defensive webs. Dozens of flak barrages filled the void. Still the attacks continued. From behind the Iron Moon, a new silhouette emerged. Unlike the Accord's curved, almost organic designs, this vessel was angular, jagged, and purposeful. A Terran dreadnought, dark, silent, beautiful in its brutal symmetry. It rotated slowly, revealing its underbelly. Along its central axis, dozens of ports hissed open. A voice without emotion pierced the comms. Accord fleet, you have entered a Terran conservation zone. Your presence is a violation of Article 0. This is your final warning. Article 0, Vita whispered. That's not even in Accord doctrine. Relon felt the blood drain from his face, because he had studied ancient pre-fall law back when humanity still maintained treaties. Article 0 wasn't a rule. It was a declaration of extinction-level respect. No negotiation, no surrender. Only one side walks away. The Terran dreadnought's underbelly shimmered, and then came the needles. A wave of micro-ordnance, smaller than a hand, but moving at relativistic speeds, fanned out across space. Each was coated with memory metals, adapting mid-flight. They bypassed shielding. They didn't destroy ships outright. They tore through critical systems, life support, reactor stabilizers, command centers. The Lorikai fell dark, then the Harvin's grace. The Terracon's fall exploded into flame, venting its crew. By the end of the minute, 1/3 of the fleet was disabled, not destroyed, neutralized. As if the Terrans didn't want bodies, they wanted survivors, witnesses. Cease all hostilities, Relon shouted into the system-wide channel. This is Vice Admiral Relon of the Accord. Stand down. I repeat, stand down. Silence. Then a response. A new voice. Female. Resolute. Eerily calm. Stand down. Acknowledged. Damage assessed. Sufficient message delivered. Relon blinked. Wait. Message. The Iron Moon's transmission beacon powered up. Not military grade. A wideband broadcast system-wide. It showed footage, not war but history. It began with Earth, its rise, its wars, its collapse. But then it diverged. It showed fleets vanishing into hidden systems, generations building ships in asteroid belts, sleeper cells buried in Accord space, secret human colonies that had waited, watched. Footage showed human children studying alien languages, human engineers mimicking Accord tech, then surpassing it, human tacticians discussing fear as a weapon, then images of Accord atrocities, glassed human colonies, political betrayals, broken treaties. This wasn't propaganda, it was memory, a eulogy, a promise. The final image was of a human child, no older than 5, looking into the camera. Her voice was clear. You told stories about us. We remember. The feed and the dreadnought cloaked, disappearing like smoke in starlight. In the silence that followed, Veda whispered, they didn't come to kill us. Relon, eyes wide, nodded. They came to make sure we're afraid. A week later, the Accord Council convened an emergency galactic session. The footage had gone viral. Across thousands of worlds, species were asking one question. What happens when the monsters you made come back not as beasts, but as gods? A war of shadows. The Accord called it the Midnight Reprieve, a moment of artificial calm in the galaxy's political theater. High councils paused, armadas regrouped, outer sectors placed on silent lockdown. It wasn't a peace, it was a breath before a scream. The Terran dreadnought's appearance had sent shockwaves through interstellar civilization, not because of its firepower. Many species had ships of similar size and destructive potential, but because they had no warning, no precedent, no explanation. Humanity had returned with tactics so alien, so psychologically exacting, it forced the Accord to consider a deeper question. What if they were never meant to win a war with humans? What if they were only meant to survive one? In a fortified orbital station above the Accord core world of Rylith, High Marshal Kalrex watched a looping vidstream. He was old, so old his implants predated the Neuralink age. His species, the Sarek, lived long lives, but Kalrex had earned each wrinkle through blood and fire. The footage on the screen showed the destruction of the Valiant Sky slowed to frame by frame. He watched the rail slugs tear through its stern, then rewind, then play again. "Why kinetic rounds?" he asked aloud, his breath fogging slightly from the chilled control room. Across from him, Intelligence Commander Risa J, a young Thalari with silver skin and pupilless eyes, replied, "Tactical efficiency. Kinetics leave no energy signature, no warning, no traceable power core." Kalrex shook his head. "No, it's more than that. It's a message." He tapped the screen. "They want us to know how we died." In the shadows of a forgotten moon in the Elorian Drift, the human recon ship Ghost Lantern hovered silently, cloaked by a multi-spectrum veil. Inside its nerve center, Commander Arya Vale stood over a battle map. Her crew was small, 12 operatives, no admirals, no generals, just specialists. "Fleet movements along the Accord's Delta Spine have slowed by 30%, whispered Miko, the ship's deep ops navigator. "Their outer patrols have doubled back. Intercepts are avoiding Terran rumored zones." Arya smiled. "Fear is exponential. One strike feeds 100 rumors." Her fingers danced across the table. "We've only shown them teeth," she murmured. "Let's show them ghosts." Back on Rylith, Marshal Kalrex stood before the Inner Security Council. The chamber was fortified, both physically and mentally, each member linked to a psi dampener that suppressed panic impulses during high-risk deliberations. "We are being stalked," Kalrex began. "By a species that should not exist," muttered Counselor Inari. "They exist, and they've been studying us, mimicking. They don't just know our ships, they know our psychology." Zay stepped forward. "We believe human agents have infiltrated multiple command worlds. Their method subspace tunneling." Gasps followed. "Subspace tunneling is theoretical." Zay interrupted. "They've operationalized it." She placed a hollow on the table. It shimmered to life, revealing a captured human device, recovered from the wreck of the Dove. Small, inert, but lined with carbon black spines and crystalline nodes that resembled a collapsed fold engine. "If we are correct, this device allows insertion teams to bypass traditional hyperspace routes. They don't need gates, they don't use our maps, they can appear anywhere." Kalrex's voice was a whisper. "They walk through shadows." At Accord Station Atherix Prime, nestled in orbit above a secure research colony, alarms blared, not from weapons fire, from silence. A full wing of defense drones had ceased transmission. No explosion, no damage report, just gone. Commander Lurok dispatched Marines. They never arrived. An hour later, the station's central AI core received a message. No source, no trace, only sound. A human breathing, slowly, calmly, then a whisper. "Do you feel safe?" On the Ghost Lantern, Arya Vale watched her team move with the discipline of ghosts. They didn't kill unless necessary. They sabotaged oxygen regulators just enough to trigger fear. They rewired broadcast loops to play ancient human songs in abandoned corridors. They left messages scratched in old Terran. "You're in our house now. Remember Earth. We forgive nothing." She turned to her tactical lead, a stoic man named Dren. "Status of the Accord listening post. Dark. We've replaced their data with fabricated report. They think they've lost us. They haven't." "And the station above Rylith," Dren smiled. "Tomorrow, 0300 local time. Power systems fail. Their capital wakes up to darkness." Back in Rylith's Grand Observatory, Kalrex felt it before he heard it. The lights dimmed, comms flickered. Even his implant's thought feeds stuttered. The psi dampeners failed. Panic bloomed like a virus. In the chaos, Kalrex rose and activated manual lockdown. His old hands moved fast. He opened the emergency line. One channel, direct, ancient. "This is High Marshal Kalrex of the Accord. We acknowledge your presence. State your demands." Silence. Then no demands, just memory. A soft hiss followed. A face appeared. Human, female, scarred, calm. "Arya Vale, you forget us. You erased us. You told your children we were monsters." Kalrex stared at her. "Are you here to prove that wrong?" Her expression didn't change. "No, we're here to remind you that monsters don't need forgiveness." She ended the call. At dawn, every Accord capital received a simultaneous burst of encrypted data. One file, one message, footage from ancient Earth, but not war, survival, human families underground, children learning by candlelight, soldiers building fleets in the shadows, not monsters, survivors. The message ended with a line in a dead Terran dialect. Translated it read, "You feared what we became what you feared." On the ghost lantern, Arya leaned back, exhausted. "We've shown them shadows," she said. "What now?" asked Miko. "We wait. For what?" Her gaze was cold. For them to make a mistake. The memory engine, in the deepest vaults of Arkan Spire, the Accord's most restricted archive world, automated drones fluttered between rows of data obelisks, monolithic storage pillars, each the size of a starship and etched with forbidden history. Security was total. AI wardens, quantum locks, and sentient firewalls monitored all access, and yet, someone had breached it. Not physically, psychologically. Across Accord space, their people were beginning to ask questions that hadn't been asked in centuries. Where did the Terrans go? Why were all records post-fall so fragmented? Why were some archives deliberately corrupted? The Terran broadcast had not just frightened the Accord, it had awakened doubt. Counselor Theron of the Accord Historical Division moved with controlled panic through Arkan Spire's primary chamber. His robes trailed behind him, his multi-jointed fingers fluttering against the biometric vault's console. "Open classification tier, Kappa 0, he ordered. Cross-reference all data tagged Human Exodus, Blindfold Protocol and Ghost Directive." The console resisted. "This content is restricted by Article 9b of the Truth-Silence Accord," Theron hissed. "Override with historical emergency mandate." The system paused, then opened, and the galaxy shifted. Thousands of years ago, after Earth's apparent self-destruction, a covert branch within the Accord, the Precursor Containment Bureau, had documented evidence that some humans had survived. Not just a handful, an entire civilization had vanished into deep space. No light, no comms, no gates, just gone. The project to erase this knowledge had a name, Project Blindfold. Its directive was simple: erase all trace of surviving Terrans, destroy known colonies, eliminate diaspora remnants, reframe history as extinction. The Accord hadn't merely believed humanity was dead, they had ensured it. Back aboard the Ghost Lantern, Commander Arya Vale studied the AI simulation loop playing on her holopad. It depicted various Accord species viewing the recovered Terran footage. Reactions varied: disbelief, guilt, panic, reverence. "Project Blindfold has holes," said Dren, her second in command. "Even some Accord officials didn't know the full truth." "They know now," Arya replied. She uploaded the next payload, a virus called Lucidity. Lucidity didn't destroy data, it unlocked hidden files, those quarantined by high-level Accord censorship firewalls. It would burrow into civilian networks, personal archives, state education corps. 18-2, and it would whisper, "You were lied to." On the Accord world of Surya Prime, millions of civilians woke up to forgotten images. Old Terran broadcasts, human music, interviews with Earth's last leaders, heartbreaking speeches from the brink of collapse, voices speaking of survival, of memory, of return. The public demanded answers. Riots broke out in the knowledge districts. Philosophers, once silenced, shouted again from public squares. The myths were true. We erased our own crimes. How many Terrans did we kill believing they were gone? In the Accord Defense Ministry's citadel, High Marshal Calrex stood with Counselor Jay and two military AI interfaces. "We're losing control of the narrative," Jay said, voice hard. "They aren't fighting us with fleets now. They're fighting with truth." Calrex frowned. "Worse, they're fighting with our lies." One of the AIs pulsed red. Advisory: Terran AI incursions detected in 17 of 43 high-value network clusters. Memory engine risk approaching threshold level. Viral awareness. Shay turned to Calrex. "If we don't act now, half the galaxy will be asking to surrender to Earth." Calrex stared at the red glow, thoughts racing. "No," he said. "They don't want surrender. They want atonement." On a barren exomoon known as Worm's Grasp, a rogue Accord historian named Vela Joran emerged from hiding. She had lived in exile since publishing a banned theory that Earth was not destroyed, only hidden. Now vindicated, she went live on a coordinate from a pirate channel. Her speech ignited a cultural detonation. "They vanished because they had to. We forced them. We silenced their story. But stories survive. And now we must ask ourselves, do we deserve to survive? The memory engine, humanity's term for their psychological campaign, continued its work. Every act, every upload, every whisper was curated to not just instill fear, but shape guilt, shape reverence. Humanity would not need to conquer. They would be remembered. At the heart of an abandoned Terran outpost orbiting a dead star, Arya Vale stood before a chamber-sized construct of crystal and fiber, the original memory engine. She placed her hand on it. It pulsed faintly. Old, alive, begin final phase, she whispered. That same night, across every Accord world, one last message played. A Hyle's voice, calm, human. We were stories. Now we are memory. Tomorrow, we become future. We are human. We remember you. Then silence. And star. The siege of Accord Prime. The twin suns of Accord Prime bathed the capital world in molten gold. A deceptive serenity draped over the seat of a civilization teetering on collapse. From orbit, the world glistened like a jewel, impossibly advanced, architecturally magnificent, and historically untouchable. And yet, today it would become a lesson, not in destruction, but in Fleet Commander Yaris. Olun stood aboard the Eminence Ascending, second in command of the Accord's planetary defense fleet. He was calm, measured, one of the few leaders who had not succumbed to the hysteria surrounding the Terran return. He believed in hard data, and the data told him that Accord Prime was defended by 91 orbital rail platforms, 2,300 fighter wings, 18 Dreadnought-class ships, 5 overlapping shield grids, 1 solar interference curtain preventing stealth incursions. In short, a fortress. And yet, something gnawed at him. There had been no Terran activity in 48 hours. Not a whisper. Not a pulse. Too quiet. High Marshal Calrex arrived in the command deck with an urgency that made even hardened officers stand straighter. Report, he said. No movement. No infiltration. Olun replied. And that's the problem, Calrex muttered. He activated the battlefield map. Statistically, their behavior suggests a pattern of psychological escalation. First fear, then guilt, then silence. The silence is never random. He pointed to the northern orbital belt. Start there. Scan everything. Not just for energy. Scan for voids, zones of thermal silence, mass shadows, interference layers. A moment later, alarms screamed. The orbital station Rays, Thorn Delta positioned in Accord Prime's outermost defense shell blinked off the grid. No explosions. No EMP. Just gone. Like it had never existed. Then the reports flooded in. Communication dead zones forming in a perfect ring. Power fluctuations across orbital platforms. Defensive AI loops frozen mid-cycle. It wasn't an attack. It was disablement. The Ghost Lantern, hidden behind the distorted edge of the Lapis Sun, deployed its full fleet, 30 Terran Dread-class vessels, each equipped with neural stealth arrays, multi-layered jamming fields, and graviton lances. They did not broadcast. They did not threaten. They execute. A single subspace jump dropped the entire formation into low orbit. Inside the Accord's defensive curtain, the world below screamed into high alert. Within seconds, Shield Grid 1 collapsed under a coordinated graviton burst. The orbital command AIs were hijacked using archived Accord protocols, taught to humans by their own defectors. Civilian satellites were redirected to broadcast a live feed of the siege, but to every Accord citizen across the galaxy. They were about to witness something unforgettable, not destruction, domination. From a civilian tower on Accord Prime, a family of Tristari watched the skies. Their daughter gasped. "Mother, what's that?" In the heavens above, Terran ships hovered, not raining fire but projecting light. Holograms, massive and silent, spread across the sky. They showed the history they had been denied. The bombing of Earth's last cities, Accord expeditions that were actually extermination campaigns, audio logs of Accord generals ordering the purge of human colonies, and finally a single phrase repeated in every Accord dialect. "We were never gone. You simply stopped looking." Calrex shouted orders, counter-intrusion protocols, launch everything. Olun hesitated. "Sir, they're not attacking." Calrex paused, looked again. Indeed, The Terrans were neutralizing infrastructure, not citizens, not habitats, no kinetic strikes. They surgically removed power stations, comms relays, command hubs. The Accord's planetary government was alive but blind. Deaf, paralyzed. Why aren't they finishing us? Someone whispered. Calrex answered. Because they already have. Inside the ghost lantern, Arya Vale watched the feed. No civilian deaths? Dren asked. None. Collateral capped at 0 point. But shame lingers forever. She activated the final phase. Across every screen, every implant, every broadcast system on Accord Prime, a face appeared. Old, weathered, human. President Elias Corrin, the last leader of United Earth, recorded centuries ago. We asked for peace. You gave us genocide. We built in silence. We learned your languages. We studied your minds. And now we return not to destroy, but to remind. You do not erase a people. You delay their memory. The feed cut. Across the galaxy, shockwaves followed. On Telerath, riots overthrew the Accord's colonial governors. On Vask's moon, statues of human warriors were raised overnight. On Crador Station, elite Accord soldiers laid down arms, citing cultural reckoning. The siege of Accord Prime had ended not in fire, but in humiliation. A species once thought extinct had just paralyzed a galactic empire without killing it. Because victory wasn't about burning cities. It was about rewriting history, with the truth. Back on Earth, a world still cloaked, still hidden. Millions watched from shadow satellites. Children cheered, elders wept. The stories had come full circle. Arya Vale sat in silence, as her ship drifted from the Accord core. Are we done? Dren asked. She shook her head. No, the story isn't over. Then what now? Arya stared into the void. Now, we wait for them to change, or beg us not to. The last archive, the stars over Earth, shimmered behind the vast cloak array. Once a scorched husk, the planet had grown again alive beneath the surface, surrounded by satellites that disguised its heat signature, electromagnetic emissions, and even gravity well distortions. For over 700 years, Earth had hidden not in retreat, but in design. Now its final message was ready. Far above in deep orbit, the Echo Citadel awaited. It was not a warship, but a library. Terran built, 100 kilometers long, made of obsidian alloys and crystalline memory vaults. It carried within it the sum of everything humanity had ever endured, and everything the galaxy had ever denied. And now it would across the known galaxy. Every device, every network, every smart surface blinked once. A forced broadcast override. No escape, no opt-out. Even unpowered relics sparked to life. The last archive had opened. The first image was of Earth, burning, dying. Nuclear fires, megacities falling, mass evacuations into deep space arcs, biological collapse, political fragmentation. But the next images were worse. Footage from Accord warships firing on colony arcs, marked as civilian. Cryochambers riddled with rail slugs. Accord commanders smiling over human corpses. Testimony from species forced into silence. The narrative had always been humanity destroyed itself. But the archive showed the truth. They were hunted, erased, exiled. High Marshal Calrex watched from the Accord Prime Council chamber. The lights flickered, but he didn't move. Neither did the Council, because the feed was now inside their minds. Neurolinked data pulses, non-invasive but absolute, delivered the entire archive directly into every sapient nervous system tuned to an Accord channel. Emotion, memory. Across the galaxy, reactions unfolded like chain lightning. On Haldrith, a former Accord executioner shot himself. On Myralus, thousands dropped to their knees in prayer facing Earth's coordinate. On Jelkas, the school children held hands and sang a Terran lullaby downloaded just minutes before. Accord veterans, once proud, now trembled with rage, not at humanity but at themselves. In the deepest sector of the archive stream came the final chapter, a lone voice, that of Elias Corrin, United Earth's final president, recorded moments before Project Blindfold was initiated. His face was pale, lined, calm. If this message is playing, then we have returned, and not for conquest, not for vengeance, but for closure. We endured, we bled, we built, we learned your languages, your myth, your games, and then we made our own. Now you know what we suffered. Now you carry it too. What you do with that memory is yours. The broadcast ended. No fleet came, no invasion, no ultimatum, only silence. And in that silence, a question: what happens now? In a quiet temple on Accord Prime, a child named Ellen held her father's hand. She was part of the first generation to be born after the Terran revelation. Her school had shown her the archive. Her teachers no longer spoke of humans as myths. She looked up at the stars. Do you think they're watching us? She asked. Her father nodded. I think they always were. On Earth, deep within Mount Resurgence, Arya Vale stood in the Hall of Witness. Statues surrounded her. Men and women who had died in the Exodus, in the cold and silence. Not warriors, survivors. Dren entered quietly. It's done. The archive is fully integrated. Arya said nothing for a moment. Then she asked, do you think they'll forgive themselves? Eventually, Dren said, but not all of them. Good, she whispered. We don't need absolution. We only need to be remembered. A final message was logged into the Terran Central Relay. Encrypted. Simple. They thought we were myth. We reminded them we were history. Now let them shape the future with eyes open. Across the stars, one truth burned brighter than any ship, any weapon, any empire. You can silence a voice, but you cannot erase a memory.